The typewriter clicked. It did that a lot, even with no one sitting in front of it, though most days someone was. Graham kept it close, on the antique wooden desk by the window, on the granite kitchen counter while he ate, once even balanced on his knee on the couch with the TV muttering in the background. Old as it was cared for, and cared for things don't usually make noise on their own. That afternoon, it did. A full moon poured silver light through the windows, turning the condo and the forest around it the color of old bone. It should have been peaceful. Instead, the light felt like it was waiting for something. And as the machine clicked away at nothing, its owner was getting ready to get rid of a ghost of his own. Graham Campbell hadn't believed in any of this a month and a half ago. He'd moved out here to write, something soft and romantic, nothing like the mess his life had become since. He wrote about love. He did not write about basements that moaned. But that's what this basement did. Some nights, hunched over his typewriter at 2 in the morning, he'd hear it. Low groans, the creak of feet on a floor that shouldn't have anyone on it. Murmurs too low to make out words. The first time, he'd grabbed a frying pan and gone down to look, brave right up until the last stair, which he never actually crossed. There was nothing down there. No animal, no person, nothing that could explain what he'd heard. He hadn't slept that night, just lay there staring at the hairline cracks in his floorboards like they might start talking too. He told himself it was the house settling. He told himself it a lot, actually, right up until it stopped being enough of an explanation. He brought a friend over once to check the basement out fully. The friend found nothing either, called him crazy, and left early. But things kept disappearing. Food, knives. They'd turn up on the basement floor or somewhere else in the condo entirely, like they'd been carried and dropped. Eventually, Graham did what anyone with a laptop and too much free time does. He Googled the house. That's how he found the name.
Carver Price. 22 years old when the papers stopped writing about him. Shaggy black hair, an overgrown beard, sunken cheeks, green eyes that the newspaper photos somehow made look worse than they probably were. No wife, no kids that anyone could trace, and a local reputation that had curdled into something ugly by the time anyone paid attention. On November 14th, 1993, in the house that used to stand where Graham's condo now stood, Carver Price cut the throats of David Page, his wife Angela, and their 2 kids, Michael and Michelle. The town knew who did it almost immediately. Eyewitnesses put him at the house. His record was already bad, and he had no alibi worth the name. He never made it to trial. Less than 2 weeks after the murders, firefighters got a call to a house across town, and by the time they arrived, it was already a shell. They found bones in the ash, ruled it a self-set fire, called it suicide, called Carver Price dead, and the town let itself exhale and move on. Easier that way. 15 years later, Graham was the one who couldn't move on. Somehow the killer's ghost, because what else could it be, had ended up in the basement of a condo complex built right over the old foundation. Up to code, technically, just enough to rent out as extra storage. Great. He didn't know the first thing about getting rid of a ghost. He'd seen a few shows, sure, but he didn't trust anything Hollywood had touched. So on the night of the full moon, this was where he'd landed, standing in the middle of his own living room in a bathrobe, because he didn't own ceremonial robes, and as it turned out, neither did the internet forum selling this ritual to him. His hair, red and badly in need of a cut, stuck up like he'd been pulling at it. Dark circles sat under his eyes. His bottom lip was raw from being chewed on. He'd shoved the furniture back against the walls, laid a ring of sea salt on the floor with 3 white candles set around it in a triangle. Sage smoke curled up near the typewriter, which was still clicking softly to itself on the desk. A few black stones sat heavy in his bathrobe pocket, because the website had said onyx protected against negative energy, and at this point, he'd take anything. None of that was the strangest part of the scene. The strangest part was his twin brother, sitting on the couch, watching all of it. "You know," Eric Campbell said, feet already up on the coffee table, "most brothers greet each other with a hug, maybe a beer, not—" He waved a hand at the whole salt and candle production. "This. It has to be done," Graham said, crouched low, checking the salt ring for gaps. "By the internet. Very trustworthy source." Eric zorked. "Did the internet also tell you to wear that?" Graham glanced down at his bathrobe. It said ceremonial robes. "I don't have ceremonial robes." "Who does?" "Eric, please." "I'm just saying." Eric was grinning now, enjoying himself. Also, his name was Carver. Feels a little on the nose for a guy who turned out to be a serial killer, don't you think? "Just help me," Graham said, not looking up. "I know you don't believe any of it. I need you here anyway. Don't make me regret this."
Fine. And what exactly is this? Eric leaned forward, eyebrows up. "You look ridiculous. Your whole condo looks ridiculous. You're really about to lose your mind over a few noises?" "It's the first thing I'm trying," Graham snapped, lighting the last candle. "If it doesn't work, I'll try something else. I'm not moving out unless I have to. But if you'd heard what I hear every night, Eric, you'd be doing this too." Eric rolled his eyes, but he got up anyway, muttering something about how Graham didn't know what a real bad apartment sounded like. Between the two of them, they finished fast. Sage lit, crucifixes hung on the walls, a couple of Bibles cracked open on the coffee table for good measure. "Can't take any chances," Graham said later, like that justified any of it. He set the typewriter carefully on the desk, out of the way, and picked up his phone. "What are you doing now?" Eric asked, peering over his shoulder. "There's a chant, supposed to send him away." "You're gonna read a bedtime story to a serial killer's ghost, and he's just gonna say, 'my bad,' and leave? The guy killed a family and then himself. I don't think reasonable was ever really his thing." "You're the worst," Graham muttered, but he turned to face the basement door anyway, standing at the point of the candle triangle. He hadn't been brave enough to do this in the basement itself. If this went wrong, he wanted stairs between himself and whatever answered. "Spirit that resides here," he read aloud, voice already unsteady. "With this circle of salt and sage and onyx, I stand protected from your wrath. I speak to you with respect, and I ask the same in return." He paused. Nothing. "Ghostbusters off to a slow start," Eric whispered, and got a glare for it. Graham kept going. "I understand this house meant something to you once. It's mine now. I'm asking you to leave." A bang cracked up through the floor, and both of them jumped, eyes locking. Eric's smirk was gone. "I know you're trapped here," Graham said faster now, "but it's time to move on. You've been in my life, now my brother's too, and I'm asking—" Another bang, harder, and a moan rose up from the basement like something in pain. Eric didn't say a word this time. He just watched. "I only ask that you respect that there's somewhere better for you to go," Graham said, and flinched as the moan cracked into a yell and the banging turned vicious. The light stuttered. He thought, distantly, of the fuse box down in that basement. "Graham," Eric's voice had lost all its edge. "What the hell is this?" "It's him," Graham straightened. "Carver Price, go home." The banging stopped. The silence after was almost worse. Neither of them moved.
"Do you think," Eric started, and the basement door slammed against its frame so hard the hinges screamed. He lunged for it, throwing his weight against the wood as the yelling behind it turned to something closer to rage. Graham could only watch as his brother held the door with his whole body. "Do something!" Eric shouted, jolted forward as another impact hit the door from the other side. "Carver, you need to get out! You need to move on!" Graham's voice cracked on every word. It wasn't enough. Eric's grip was slipping, his knuckles white against the wood, sweat running down his face. "Graham, leave this place!" Graham screamed at this time, crouched in his salt circle like it was the only solid ground left in the world. The typewriter clattered on the desk, faster and faster, matching the banging, matching the screaming. His own, Eric's, he couldn't tell anymore, until the lights gave out completely and the noise built to something unbearable. And then, nothing. The house went silent. Graham sank to his knees on the living room floor, certain in that moment that it was over. The weeks after were quiet in a way Graham hadn't felt in his new home before. He slept through the night for the first time since he'd moved in. Actually slept. No waking at 3 a.m. to sounds with no source. It should have let him get back to his novel. Instead, his brother stuck around. Eric didn't visit often, so Graham didn't mind at first, even with how much chaos he brought into a quiet house. But a week and a half in, Eric was just gone. No goodbye, no text. Graham only noticed because the driveway was empty and Eric's stuff wasn't in the guest room anymore. He tried calling a few times, got nothing back, and told himself he'd try again in a few days. People get busy, people forget to text back. He also told himself he needed an electrician. Ever since the night of the ritual, his power had been unreliable, lights flickering, internet down completely. He figured Carver had done something to the fuse box on his way out, which was a strange thing to believe, and stranger still that he half meant it. His landline still worked, and he had leftover ritual candles, so he made do. And he still had the typewriter, thank God. Solid, unbothered by any of it, clicking away exactly the way it always had. Sitting with it felt like the one normal thing left in his life. The sound of the keys and the sound underneath the keys when his hands went still had become something he didn't just tolerate, but needed. A few nights after Eric left, Graham was back at his desk by the window, moon high over the trees, working on a chapter and feeling for the first time in a month and a half like things had actually gone back to normal. Then a bang from the front of the condo threw that feeling straight out the window. No.
It came again, louder, from the basement door. Graham was on his feet before he'd finished thinking, backing toward the bed. The basement door was near the front entrance, too far to reach from the bedroom before whatever was making that noise reached him. But that was a stupid thought, wasn't it? Ghosts didn't hurt people. It was just noise, just some old spirit rattling a door it couldn't actually open. The door was already open. A man was standing in it. Graham hit the bedpost and slid down against it, staring. Thin, sunken cheeks, just like the photo, but older. Silver at the temples, lines the photo had never shown, because ghosts don't age, and Carver Price had clearly aged 15 years since anyone last saw him breathing. He was holding one of Graham's own kitchen knives, the blade dark and wet. He was wearing Eric's jacket. Whatever sound came out of Graham then wasn't a word. It barely counted as a plea. He didn't notice the typewriter picking up speed on the desk behind him, clicking faster the closer the man got. He backed against the wall like it might swallow him whole, and somewhere in the part of his brain that was still working, the pieces started arranging themselves into an order he didn't want. If he'd gone further than the third stair that first night, if he'd called the police instead of his brother, if he'd driven out on the forest road and found Eric's car in the ditch where it actually was, instead of assuming a phone call from work, if he'd had the electrician out sooner, the one who would have told him the power lines to his condo had been cut, not shorted. If he hadn't decided, so easily, that a killer in his basement had to be a ghost and not a man. If. But he hadn't, and now here was the cost of it, standing in his bedroom doorway. Because people aren't only capable of one thing. They can write novels and also hide in basements for 15 years. They can be gentle and also learn, slowly, to enjoy the opposite of gentle. Carver Price hadn't died in that fire. He'd found a way to disappear into it, and then found a way to survive in a condo basement most people were too polite to actually search. Not a ghost. A man who had gotten very, very good at staying alive, at the cost of everything else. Graham thought, in the last clear second he had, that if he'd been half as good at surviving as the man in front of him, he might have made it too. Then he screamed. The man stepped back into the dark. The typewriter went still.